Hi, this is Knit Locally. I'm Jamie, and today we're going to talk about fingering yarn versus sock yarn, fingering weight yarn, and how they are similar and different. So, the first thing to say is not all fingering weight yarn is sock yarn. What makes a fingering weight yarn sock yarn traditionally is the addition of nylon. There are other things you can add, the twist, the ply, all those things will factor into it. So if you wanted to use a non-superwash, but superwash and nylon traditionally will make a good sock yarn. So let's talk about that for a minute. We have traditionally, if you will look, very thin ply of yarn, and that's where people refer to it as a fingering weight yarn. It's usually a 1 or a 2. And designers have discovered this in the last several years and started making garments out of it. And they make beautiful, beautiful garments, very drapey, beautiful shawls. But traditionally they were used for socks. And so when I look at a sock yarn, I use socks to go to the gym, to hike in. I will use my hand knit socks. And I am looking for something that's going to wear well. The wool will wick away the moisture, which makes my feet breathe if I'm running or something. And also if you have stinky feet, it helps because wool is antimicrobial. So all these things makes them great to wear, hard wearing, I suppose. But with that, I need the addition of nylon. So this particular yarn here that I'm looking at is actually an 80 superwash merino nylon. And the reason they do superwash or recommend superwash for sock yarn is because you can sweat in it and it won't felt. A lot of people tell you not to throw your socks in the washing machine, and for sure don't dry them. I break those rules personally. I do throw my socks in the wash. I don't recommend everybody do it. You just have to know how it's going to shorten the life of those socks. So I will throw mine in the washing machine. I don't recommend it. They do recommend hand washing and just laying flat to dry. I do lay mine flat to dry. But I also wear mine at the gym, hiking, get pretty sweaty. So the nylon is what gives it the yarn, the merino, which is very soft. Next to your skin, it's going to feel beautiful on your feet, but it gives it the strength and the bounce back so that when you are wearing them, they are going to get stretched out naturally, and then when you wash them, they will go back to their original shape. That's why you could use something that has an alpaca, and we'll talk about that in there, but that is going to be what's going to help it lose its shape faster. So you just have to know that. There is no wrong yarn to use for socks. It's just how is it going to wear, how do you like it, and what are you planning to do with it, right? I don't wear my cashmere socks to the gym, so I will stick to my merino or BFL with nylon. So if you see a yarn that has an 80-20 blend, 80 merino, 20 merino, or 20 nylon, or 80 BFL, 20 nylon, that will make a perfect sock yarn, right? Perfect for your socks. This is right here. It's an 85-15, still a really nice blend. You can see this is actually a 2-ply, which means it's just gonna be a little bit on the thinner side. And it's just 2 strands that make up the single yarn. This one is actually a tighter ply. It looks like it's a 4 or a 6 ply. I can't really take that apart, but anyway, it is a 85-15, still really great for socks. And I wanted to show you, if you can see here, how it has a bounce, right? So if I pull it back, it has that bounce and that memory. And that's really kind of what you're looking for in terms of, if you're just gonna pick up a sock yarn in the skein and you're like, I wanna make socks with this, is it going to have that bounce, that spring back that you're looking for? And to show you the difference is, if you pull this yarn here, and I pull this, it has virtually no spring back, right? And that just means your socks are not gonna spring back the way you want them to as you're wearing them, as you're washing them. Socks are intended to be worn with a negative ease. It means, let's say your foot is 10 inches, you're gonna make it maybe 9 inches, so they're gonna really conform to your foot. And one of the things that's gonna help hold that sock on your foot and make it comfortable is that bounce back. And that's where your nylon really kind of comes in. This is another nice sock yarn. This one is going to be 75-25, so it is a bit more nylon in it. You can see it is a bit of a tighter twist, and it does still have that bounce that you're looking for. But again, it says right on there that it is a superwash merino, so you know you can do that. Let's talk about cashmere and silk blends, because we see a lot of fingering weight yarn that has silk and cashmere in it. Definitely use it for socks if you want, 100% okay. I have used it for socks and I wear them, but I think you're just gonna have to think about what you're gonna wear them with. Where are you gonna wear them? Are you gonna wear them to the office, where you sit at your desk most of the time, you have on nicer dress shoes, something like that, and they're not gonna be very hard worn? Or are you gonna wear them to the gym? Are you gonna wear them on your 5-mile walk? In which case, cashmere is going to feel wonderful, but over time it will actually just wear out faster. And so that's where maybe you think about, do you want to put a contrasting yarn with nylon in the heel, right? So it'll give it a more wearability. Do you want to put yarn with nylon in the toes so it will wear a little better? You just have to think about those things. You can also tell that with the addition of the cashmere, the twist is different, and you just want to think about that when you're mixing and matching your yarns. So something to keep in mind, not that I wouldn't use it for socks, but for sure I would just consider the wearability and what you're going to do with it. If you were going to make bedtime socks that you're just wearing to bed because you get cold in the winter, by all means, go with the cashmere. It's going to keep your feet warm. Now this is a 75-25, but it has silk. Silk will give it wearability. It will act like a nylon. It will also sort of reduce the stretch a little bit. So if you think about like here, it just doesn't have the bounce that it does with just the nylon. So again, something to keep in mind when you're making socks with it is the spring back. And again, I would use a merino silk yarn for socks that are just a little less hard worn, right? So just more dress up socks, less everyday socks. This is another superwash 100% merino. So the question is, can you make socks that do not have nylon, they do not have silk? It's 100% superwash merino. The answer is absolutely. You can make socks with anything. You can see this here actually has a really nice bounce to it because it has a tight twist. And that's the other sort of overriding factor, is if my yarn doesn't have nylon, doesn't have silk, doesn't have anything else to give it stability and memory, does it have a tight twist? And if the answer is yes, then I'm much more likely to use it for socks, because your twist will make up for a lot of it. The tighter your yarn is spun, the less it's going to pill and the less it will sort of wear out. So this particular yarn is fairly tightly spun. You can see by the spring back. So I would say even though it doesn't have a silk or a nylon, you could make socks with it. This yarn here has, it's a 92/8, so it is 92% superwash merino, and it has the Lurex. And you can see it's got the pretty sparkle. You can use sparkle for socks. And it has a bit of a tight twist. So I've used this yarn before. So even though I'm not pulling up a piece where I can show you, but it does have a fairly tight twist. It does actually make really nice socks because it has such a super tight twist. So while I wouldn't necessarily always say go ahead and use it if it doesn't have nylon in it, if it does have a super tight twist like this, and you can see the difference. This is a very loose twist here, doesn't have a ton of bounce, very loose twist, and this here also has a much tighter twist to it. So you can sort of see there the difference in the twists. And that's kind of what you're looking for if you're looking for a sock yarn, is something that has a tight twist versus this looser ply. Right, and again, that's just if you're trying to make some hard-wearing socks that you're not gonna have to worry about. If you wanted to make, this is just 100% merino as well. I would use this for, again, nicer sort of dress-up socks, right? Because it is a looser ply and it will wear really well. It will feel nice against your feet, but it doesn't have that nylon to give it that stability or memory. let's talk about things that are made out of something that's not merino. All right, so I'm gonna move these over to the side. Let's talk about these yarns. So what do you do if you are worn out with your merino and you want something a little different? We have not shown you a BFL yarn, but BFL has a long staple, which is the length of the fiber that they use. Merino is actually very short, but BFL is actually very much longer, so it will pill, and it will pill much less than a merino. It wears harder, it wears longer. It's much more like a Cormo, which we are going to talk about. And so for me, it actually does make a better sock yarn, but that's 100% up to you. This particular yarn that we have right now is actually a British wool, which does have the BFL, and then it also has some alpaca. So it's going to add some nice softness and a nice halo, but because it doesn't have the nylon, it's not going to be as long wearing. And so that, you know, if I found a yarn like that that was blended with a British long wool, I know they're going to wear really well. I know they're going to not pill, but with the alpaca, I know it's also going to stretch and not have that memory. So I think that's just something to keep in mind in knowing your fibers, right? So, but for sure, still would make socks out of it. This is a Cormo. Cormo is a long wool. So again, BFL, long staple. And this is actually in the skein. This is a sample of it. But if you can see the bounce on this, that is crazy, the bounce that this has. It is a long wool. It is not going to pill very easily, and even though this does not have nylon in it, 100% I would use it for socks because it is going to have that memory, it's going to have that wearability, and I think just the twist of it is going to give you the memory that you need. So for sure I would do that. The other thing to keep in mind is if you're using a superwash versus a non-superwash, the ones I just showed you, the Cormo and then the BFL with the alpaca, they're not superwash. So you can't throw them in the washing machine. Or you can, but they'll felt, and so they'll come out to fit in and fit. So what you have to do those is hand wash. And you just have to be careful to know, are you getting superwash, or you can just kind of treat it, or do you want to wash them by hand? With the Cormo, it will felt over time. It is a long wool, so it will take a little longer to felt, but because it is not a superwash, it will felt over time. And that's, something to keep in mind, depending on how you're going to wear them. Are your feet really, really sweaty? Maybe you're only going to want to wear superwash. Are you going to wear these around the house? In the evenings, bed socks, go ahead and wear the non-superwash. So I think it's just a matter of how you're going to wear them. This is just a Peruvian Highland wool. It is not superwash at all. It has very little bounce to it. This is not something I would recommend to make hard wearing socks out of. For sure you could make socks. There's no reason you can't make socks out of anything. It's a matter of how well they'll wear. These are going to just probably felt before they do anything else. And so it's just not, for me, a yarn that I would recommend. If I was going to do color work, a sweater, something like this, that would be perfect, but not for that. Let's talk about single ply. So all of these yarns that we've talked about have all been more than one ply, meaning, if you will look at this, if we go to untwist it here, right? So if we just try and untwist a little bit, you will actually see that there are 3 individual strands that make up, actually I guess this is only 2, sorry. There were 2 individual strands that make up this one strand of yarn, twisted together, which gives it stability, bounce, makes sure I can't like pull it apart and tear it, gives it all the things that we need in a yarn. We have single ply. Now this is just one strand that is spun together, and it makes a very unstable yarn for socks. For sure you can make socks out of it. People have, not a big deal, but they're going to not wear as well. the heels will wear out soon, the toes will wear out soon. Any of those friction points, they're going to wear through because the yarn actually is very loosely spun and doesn't have any stability. So I would recommend against using these for any hard wearing socks. If you were married to this, you definitely needed your fix in a single ply yarn. What I would do for the heels and the toes is I would get a nice superwash yarn that had nylon in it. So I would pick a tightly spun yarn with nylon, pair it, put it at those stress points, your heels, your toes, and that's going to make your socks wear a lot longer. If you can extend up your toe over the ball of your foot, if you think about where all of your points where you rub up against your shoes, that's where I would make sure that I use instead your yarn with nylon, or your more tightly spun, say Lurex yarn, right? So hopefully that answers some questions regarding yarn, whether it's suitable for socks, whether it's not. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, let me know. Reach out to us at Knit Locally and we'll do what I can to help you. Thanks.